Hey, welcome back to the Gotham and Beyond podcast. I am your host, Vince. Hopefully, you're doing well out there. It is Monday after the holiday weekend here in the States. Thanksgiving Day weekend. Hopefully, you had a wonderful time with your family and/or friends, or even by yourself, just having a few days off. Maybe, eating some turkey and reading some comics. DC Comics, I had some good reads myself. But today, we're going to be looking at one of the most flexible pieces of the DC Hero system, something that is kind of fun if you play it right, and as a GM, it can be fun as well. This is a rule that explains how Batman seems to always have the exact tool he needs right when he needs it. Not magic, not plot armor, though it can be plot armor in his case. Just math. Talking about Omni Gadgets. You'll find them on page 117 to 118 of the core rulebook. And once you understand how they work, you start to see why Batman kind of feels very strong for a character that just seems to be a rich, in shape guy. And he never really breaks the system. Well, maybe he does, but let's talk a little bit about it. So what is an Omni Gadget exactly? It simulates the idea that a hero has a limited number of devices ready to go at a moment's notice. And in Batman's case, you know how the infamous Bat utility belt, he just happens to always have whatever he needs in it. Well, this basically talks how it works. You're turning your whatever belt, pouch, pocket, however you want to describe it in game for your character, you have it when you need it. You need a gas grenade, you pull it out. You need some type of grapnel weapon, pull it out. Boot jets, a micro fan, something clever, something strange, something just barely possible. None of these things are pre-built. They're just defined when the player pulls the item out of their pocket and or whatever device. There's kind of a catch to this. The gadget has just one AP rating, and that never changes. So whatever the AP rating is, if it's 1, it's 1. If it's 5, it's 5. It's 10, it's 10. So those become the attribute and the power it imitates. And we'll explain how that works in just a bit. This kind of keeps the idea of it being flexible and allows the player and the GM to keep everything fair within the book. So it lists 4 ranges here. Range A covers basic physical attributes. Range B covers mental attributes, and C covers physical and mental together, while D covers italicized powers. These are the ones that do the wild things, but D does come with the rule. If you want D powers, your gadget must also be able to mimic the A and B powers, A and B attributes as well. The more freedom you want, the more it costs. This is how the system keeps Batman really clever without turning him into Superman here. So let's take a look at building, how they exactly kind of work. We'll get into more examples afterwards, but the base cost of an Omni Gadget is 10. The factor cost starts at 5. Each reign adds a modifier to that factor cost. So if you want a physical attribute only, it'll cost you 1 in the A category range. If you want a mental attribute power or whatever mental attribute thing to it, it costs 1 in the B range. Now, if you want something that has physical and mental attribute powers, that costs 2. That's the C range. Now, if you want to add the D italicized powers, that is another point to the factor going up there. And every Omni Gadget has a gadget bonus divisor of 5, same as the standard gadget. You pay the hero points to build it. You get 1 use per battle or duration equal to its AP in time, And once it's used, it's basically destroyed. It's done. It's a one and done type item that you can't go back with. But the neat part is you don't need to buy parts to replace it or repair it or whatever. Once it's used, it's expended, it's destroyed, but it's useless then. You can also just spend hero points to rebuild another one in the time of moment, as long as you keep the idea of what you want written down. So this keeps the utility belt fresh, or your pocket belt, or whatever you want to call it, pocket pouch. I had a player that used a pocket pouch without drowning the player in a lot of bookkeeping. So you could pre-plan things and write things down. ahead of time with the Omni Belt and just, whip out the item as you need it. If you're using one of those things you constantly use, I didn't mind that. So they have an example right in the book of how Batman would use it, and the rules give kind of a clean example of how it uses the ABCD factors. Both are AP devices. Each one costs him about 34 hero points to build. In one fight, the Joker throws a gas cloud at him, just like when he does, in the 1966 Batman series. He always has these goofy things he throws at Batman, and Batman always has this clever thing he just happens to have in his belt. He pulls out a tiny fan, and that fan now has a body of 10 and an air control of 10, just enough to clear the gas. Later in the chase, Batman sees the Joker take off in a helicopter. He grabs his micro boot jets out of his little utility belt, and has a body of 10, a flight of 10, enough to close the gap. Both gadgets burn out once the scene ends. Batman does not have to buy parts. He doesn't have to rebuild just has to spend hero points to do it. This is how the system works. It's not really a convenience. It's just a clean rule of how things work and explain how Batman's able to do things. So there's a small box on the page here in the book that explains something important. You could split the APs of the Omni Gadget among multiple attributes and powers, as long as the total is not past the AP rating. So if Batman takes that same 10 AP gadget and makes boot jets again, he could change the spread a little bit. So instead of having a body of 10 and flight of 10, he can have a body of 10, flight of 7, fog 3, or vision 3, or whatever he feels. See how I'm saying here? It has an AP value of 10, and he's splitting it up to give himself other abilities in there. The key is he didn't pass 10 here. Everything else is fair game, as long as he stays within those rules. This opens a lot of doors for creative play during a session of a game. In the example in the book lists many multifunction units: night vision, thermal vision, range senses, flaming exoskeleton, strength enhancers, flight, fog. It just keeps going on with all these little good examples. Batman's entire belt becomes a library of options based on the single AP rating. This keeps the game fast. The players say what they want. You check the math. If it fits, then boom, it's done. They have what they want for the situation at hand. At your table, Omni Gadgets will shine when it's used in a couple different ways. First, when players jump into action without knowing what they need, this Omni Gadget, whatever pouch, belt, covers the gap. It saves time. No one pauses to shop around for whatever they need. The scene keeps moving. Your gameplay keeps going. Everybody seems happy and nobody seems sad. Second, when you need to reward cleverness, Omni Gadget lets players solve the problem without exactly, brute forcing their way through the situation. Though they might be able to do that with the Omni Gadget. They don't really replace powers, these Omni Gadgets, but they do fill in the gaps at the time that is needed when the situation calls for it. A collapsed building, a toxic leak, a dark shaft reaching down 30 feet, a villain hiding behind a cloud of tear gas, for example. A drone just out of reach. An Omni Gadget answers these things with a small role and a bit of imagination from the player. If you have a very imaginative player, it's going to be a dangerous thing in their hands. But again, make sure they stay within the strict AP limit. That is their anchor. The belt, the Omni pouch, whatever, should feel clever, not an all-fix-all thing type god power. Though it could seem that way in certain situations, that they always have the right thing that they need. But they still have to stay within the guidelines. So make sure you really enforce that and don't always take their word for it. While players want to play a fair game, they will take advantage of a GM that's not paying attention. And while it's your job to maintain and make sure everything happens at the table, if they see that you're not paying attention, they will take advantage of you. And that's just the way human nature is. So anyway. So if your job is the GM of the game, just keep it simple. Let the Omni Gadget shine, but keep it honest. When a player calls for a gadget, ask them to describe it. Then apply the AP rating to the desired effect of what they want to do. If they wanted a sonic disruptor, Check to see if the sonic powers fit within their range of what they're talking about by looking at the power, seeing how you want to split it up. If they want like a shape shifting device, that might be a little bit outside the zone or the scope of how an Omni Gadget works, though it's not impossible. You still might be able to get it to work with a clever player and a GM that's willing to work with them. I could see that happening. If they want like a zip line with a body of 10, man, why not? Sure, give it to them. The Omni Gadget itself should not become a wild card spell book. It should be a sharp, fast, focused item grabber thing that can help the player in the situation, especially one that is really inventive. And remember this, every Omni Gadget is used once, and after that it is spent and destroyed. I have to reiterate that a couple times because I remember players like, oh, I still have that grappling device. No, it's gone. It broke. You used it for the scene. It's done. I mean, I don't care how many APs you put into it. It doesn't last forever. So if your player wants it again, they're just going to have to spend the hero points again. So this is another way if your players are hogging or hoarding hero points and they have an Omni Gadget powers, is a way to definitely burn those hero points. I had a lot of players that like to hog hero points because all they want to do is level up, level up, level up. So this is a good way to do that. So tell me what you think also of those in the comments. I remember a couple years ago, I ran a game where they had to they were chasing the villain through the abandoned subway tunnel, and the villain was ahead of them, and they didn't realize it, but after the subways kind of looped around, and the villain decided to run back the other way. So they went through the abandoned tunnels. The lights were dead. The tracks had live power conduits in that third rail. There were sparks everywhere. So I had a player who was running a Batman type character because he had like a utility belt, and he was basically Batman ripoff, but he didn't call himself Batman. Anyway, so he used his Omni Gadget belt, and he said, I have a ground scanner. So I checked the APs, looked at the power list, gave him a body of 6, sensors of 4. Total of 10 right there. Perfect. He activated and saw a weak point in the old tunnel wall. So they cut through that, and they were able to flank the villain who was trying to get away down a different tunnel, thinking he was clever. That ended the whole chase scene, and they were able to move forward with what the situation was. None of that was really planned. I mean, they basically had a whole way around how I was handling it. And sometimes players are inventive that way, and you're going to have to just deal with it. Players be players, as they say out there, right? I mean, Omni Gadgets are one of the smartest rules in the system that makes people who are creative and inventive feel like they are almost invincible when it comes to the situation. Maybe not all the time, but they're able to pull these things out of their butt and, do whatever they want. Not literally out of the butt, but you know what I mean. They seem to be that guy, the jack of all trades, that he has the right tool. He's like MacGyver, in any situation, boom, he just pulls out what he needs and he's done. It doesn't break the rules. It just makes it a little more interesting and allows players to be creative and solve problems without sitting there going, and, players staring back at you because they have no idea what to do. They keep the game focused on the story. It doesn't allow you to flip through the books and a lot. I mean, once you figure out how the system works, it's pretty easy. You use them well. You add flavor. You add speed. If you use them too loosely, they kind of ruin the whole tension of the game and make it like he's a godlike person. So you have to be careful. Hold to the math of the AP. Keep the Omni Gadget very, very tight, very light, and let the players feel like the right tool was always close at hand when they go pulling this whatever it is out of their pocket. I don't know. I think the rule for Omni Gadgets is pretty interesting, and it's a kind of a cool thing that they came up with. I'm happy they came up with it. I've seen many players shine using these things. Then again, I've also seen other players who had the Omni Gadget who had no clue how to use the Omni Gadget, and they just kind of fluffed their way through it. And I had to walk them through, well, maybe you should do this. I mean, they were stumped, and I'm like, well, you have Omni Gadget. Maybe you should build this, and that'll probably help you when it comes to, the situation. Sometimes as a GM, you have to help the player out, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't see why not. Not every game is GM versus the players. The GM is supposed to be an adversary when it comes to games, but not to the point that it makes the game stall or stop on you. You want to be able to, tell the story while providing the action and progressing forward. That's what gaming is really all about. Though it is fun to be an adversary GM when it comes to very clever players, but that's for a different time and a different situation. Anyway, hopefully you've had an interesting time today listening to the Omni Gadgets rules and how it works. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Omni Gadgets because I love the rules. I don't know. I love DC Heroes when it comes to playing the game. As long as you have a small group. If you have too large of a group, it becomes a really giant hassle and a long session. But having just, a couple people doing a game, like 2 or 3, it's kind of a fun time. Tell me what you think in the comments. Rate me on Spotify. Rate me on Apple Podcasts. Try sending an email through the website, gotham-database.com. You can always leave comments there, or our Facebook. We have our Reddit group. We have a whole bunch of places you can find us. You just go to the website. Go to the website. Good night, everybody.